name is Aaron Eiler, and I'm with IG Tech 365. And today we're going to be talking about what small and medium businesses need to know about cyber insurance. And to help businesses understand who needs cyber insurance, who doesn't need cyber insurance, I'll throw the disclaimer in. Obviously, you need to go talk to your insurance agent or give our guests a call to see if they can help you if you're unsure or don't know who to talk to. But let's go ahead and do introductions first, and I'll start with myself. As I said, I'm Aaron Eiler. I am the CEO of IG Tech 365. We are based here in Tampa, and we are a managed service provider. So we're going out and talking to small and medium businesses, and hopefully this is going to be educational so they know when cyber insurance is going to be important to them. We are located in Tampa, but we actually service customers all across the country. So Whitney, why don't you go next?
Yes, sir. Well, thank you for having me. So my name is Whitney McIntosh. I'm with Guided Insurance Solutions. I'm a commercial risk analyst. I am helping basically place any type of commercial business. So you could always give me a call. Been in the industry now for over 15 years, basically specializing in any type of property and casualty insurance business for commercial.
Very good. And Chris, how about you?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for having me. I've been in the industry, in the insurance property casualty industry for 15 years. I've been a wholesale broker, essentially a specialist for the past 12. And so as a wholesaler intermediary, our job is to assist our commercial agents to get to specific markets that they may not have direct contracts with. In addition to that, I'm a cyber E&O and management liability practice leader at Founders Professional, which is a wholesale intermediary that's based out of St. Petersburg, Florida. We have several additional locations and people across the country, but we solely focus on professional liability, cyber liability, and errors and omissions, and D&O. So essentially, for as far as cyber goes, I've been both underwriting and brokering this product since 2007, believe it or not.
Very good. Okay, so let's start off with what is cyber insurance at kind of like the high level, the umbrella explanation.
Yeah, it's an interesting, easy enough question that is sometimes can be complex and difficult to find, but in efforts to try and simplify it, it's essentially a financial product that allows the insured or your client to transfer costs elsewhere while protecting them against financial loss to their clients as a result of a data breach, which is essentially third-party coverage, or actual costs incurred themselves due to a breach.
So how many different subsets are there under the cyber insurance umbrella? You might have data breach, you might have ransomware, what other things are there that people may want to look at individually or as a whole?
Yeah, so I mean, there's two big parts of the policy. There's your third-party coverage, which is network security and privacy liability, which these are essentially named events that could affect or that could happen as a result of a breach, and your client sues you for the financial loss incurred to them or by them or because of the release of their private info. There's also regulatory coverage, which is fines and penalties by any regulatory body that they impose upon the insured as a result of the breach. There are PCI fines and penalties, which is if they're taking credit cards, and the payment card industry, PCI itself imposes fines. And then there's, as far as the first party coverage goes, there are several. Business interruption, there is extortion, as payments as a result of ransomware. There is cybercrime, which is essentially social engineering, funds transfer fraud, phishing, telecom fraud. There's a number of different terms out there that I can easily define as well. That is the bulk of the coverage that is essentially going to be all inclusive of one policy that's delivered. So
what I'm hearing is there's lots of products.
Yes.
Right. So that's
Sure.
why I instantly started to think and realize that's why you've got to be able to sit down with somebody like Whitney to say, this is what I do for a business, right? If I'm not collecting any uh, credit card information or personal information, I don't need that kind of coverage. And you'd be able to advise somebody as to what specific policies they are most likely to have. And I know in our case, I have to look at the different things and say, yeah, I'd like that. I like that. I'm not quite ready. I think my risk tolerance over here is okay in that particular area, and maybe I'll pass on that one. But at least I'm having an intelligent conversation with Whitney to understand what my options and risks might be.
Yeah, I mean, it's I would agree with you that maybe several years ago an insured could say, we don't they can kind of hang their hat on not storing records. In fact now, I mean, there are clients that don't even store them. I think that still have an exposure, but the two main exposures have really changed dramatically over the past 3 to 5 years, and that's cybercrime and ransomware. And that has nothing to do really with records and records stored. So it's
Yeah, and
important
I'm
that they're
hearing that
aware of it.
there's actually three parties that need to be considered. One, as an MSP, we have to be concerned because we're presenting to customers that we're providing you a framework, whether it be networking and certain ways of doing networking, firewall settings, and all these other practices that may be subject to attack. So we're one party. The second party would be our customer, right? And then the third party is who is their customer. So if their customer is a bunch of other businesses, let's say it's a law firm, and now they have a bunch of clients that they've been taking information in and storing and managing, and they get breached, what's their responsibility to their clients, right? Did they give up hundreds or thousands of client information because they're a law firm and they've been doing business for 20 years? And does that roll up to us as an MSP? And if so, how do we start to figure out how to not, I don't want to say mitigate, but in essence, it is mitigation because we either need to get clients to realize the value of cyber insurance, or we need to get customers to openly acknowledge, basically in writing, I would think, that, hey, we're not going to take your recommendation. We're going to decline that. Even though we're not an insurance company, we're still not going to take your recommendation and go talk to somebody to get that cyber insurance.
Yeah, I think as the MSSP, obviously the value you bring is bolstering their cybersecurity, which nowadays, maybe not pre-pandemic, is really the deciding factor on whether you get certain preferred pricing, your security controls you have in place, uh, the amount of limit you may qualify for, or if they're even able to quote give you a proposal of insurance in the first place. You may be declined altogether because you don't have, per se, multi-factor authentication for several parts of your network. You don't have encrypted backups. There's a number of I would say, I wouldn't call them requirements. The requirements have softened a little bit, but they're still very much there.
One of the
Definitely
things that
several factors that go into it for sure.
Yeah, one of the things that we're seeing is a lot of interest in like Microsoft 365 because it's this total ecosystem that brings some security with it, and you can add kind of a hub and spoke scenario where Microsoft 365 is the hub, and you've got a certain amount of security that's inherent in that platform, and then you've got all these other options for backup to Azure or utilizing SharePoint with user access rights and file management capabilities in SharePoint, things like that. So those types of pieces of the puzzle come together under something like that, which I think is why, as a small or medium business owner, that makes it very attractive as opposed to having, I'm going to have Salesforce as my CRM, and then I'm going to have something else over here, and I'm going to have this and that, and all of a sudden now I've got everything that's not joined. There's not a cohesive ecosystem to kind of manage all of that, all those risks and processes. It's not just about the risk; it is about the business processes that you need to run your business too. The other thing that what you mentioned, Chris, kind of struck me. Is there a limit on the size of your business when it comes to being fined for having data breaches?
To my knowledge, I don't know that there is one. I don't think there's, there, I could be wrong. That's not as far as from a regulatory standpoint. We really haven't seen much of that. I think the larger entities outside of the SMB space are the ones that really need to be concerned with that. I think really what we want to focus on here is, um, statistics. I can put those numbers. I've had them ready for you in terms of the range of revenues that we're looking at that are these SMBs and what the average cost of the claim is in the biggest areas that where they're being hit.
Did you say you have statistics or you do not?
Yeah. Yep.
You got some? Yeah. Tell us about some of the stats, and what we're looking at is what, about 200,000 to 2 million in revenue.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about this is, I think at this point, the data that I just saw, and this is current data, is 68% of small businesses are being focused upon and hit with. So the revenues really doesn't, the revenue band doesn't really matter, but obviously they're in that space, so they're going to be a primary target. In terms of data from 22 to 2021, we saw ransom demands continuing to increase. The average ransom demand is up 20% from 22 to 21 at roughly 1.8 million. Does that mean that, the SMBs are going to be hit with that level of it? No, but a lot of these groups, these ransomware and these groups extorting insureds, and the smaller ones are very savvy. And, so you're definitely looking at a high six-figure, I would say, demand most of the time. Small businesses are disproportionately impacted. So, their overall claim severity rose 56% for small organizations under 25 million in revenue from 22 to 2021. We're also seeing a dramatic increase in claims frequency, 40% increase in ransomware attacks, 54% increase in funds transfer fraud and tax. And the 2022 average funds transfer loss, which is phishing, is $347,000. And so, if you don't have the coverage, you can at least see right there the impact that it could place on the business, but also, you don't have anything to go back on in terms of risk management or something to help get you those funds back.
So let's talk about a real practical example. So if my business got ransomwared, right, and they were demanding $250,000, and I didn't have $250,000 as an SMB, but I had ransomware insurance, am I going to be covered to have that ransomware paid?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So we're really where the policy kicks in is it covers, right away they take over negotiations. They have built in, in terms of paying the demand, negotiating to reduce the demand because they're familiar with the groups that are extorting, and then all the costs around that too for the forensics. I have an example here as well. As far as ransomware goes, if you like to, if you want me to tell you about it.
Sure.
So this is essentially a situation where a firewall sent an alter to an IT to IT about a suspicious IP address. The company's IT department, obviously, accessing a computer system. Employees were unable to access the system. That's the ransomware just locking them out. It was followed by a ransom demand of 1.5 million made by a group. It's known to be pretty aggressive. And so, again, they can't get into the system unless the extortion's paid. So you have loss of business income, business interruption that's involved there as well. Plus the payment itself to be able to get back into your system. So the carrier at hand here, within an hour, assembled a team of trusted incident response vendors to assist the policyholder. These vendors are contracted with the insurance company, so they're right. They're working the insurance company is their big customer. They're going to come in right away and take over. Claims team at the carrier work with the insured to review the status of their data backups, recover data and operations, suggest and review necessary work streams, assigning vendors that is to assist after hours, just basically providing boots on the ground support. And in the end, they negotiated a reduction of ransomware demand by almost 70%, and then got them back in the system. So you're not going to get a lot of that if you're uninsured.
Yeah. I have my own ransomware story, actually. About 5 years ago, my developer, one of my developers in another business, clicked the link. He wasn't thinking. He was just, he got an email, he clicked the link, it installed, and it encrypted our files. And, 15 years of information got basically tied up. And I quickly got the ransomware email after that. And my perspective on it was, how fast can I pay this so I can go back to work? Right. So I ran down to the CVS. Unfortunately, back then, before this was as big a thing as it is today, the ransomware was $400. Right. I got off super, super easy. Nobody was talking about cyber insurance back then. So I got their gift cards, whatever. I send them the numbers, and fortunately, they send the key back. And I always get the question, well, how do you know they're going to send the key? Well, it's really bad for business if they don't release the keys, because then everybody, if they weren't releasing the de-encryption keys, then nobody would be incentivized to actually pay the ransomware when it was demanded. So these criminals are smart enough to know not to shoot themselves in the foot by not giving the decryption keys in most cases. But really, the point of my story is, you can be a really small business and you can have this problem. And if you're not ready, then you could be out of business. Just you might have 10, 15 years of hard labor that evaporates because you can't access anything anymore. So that was an eye opener. And I actually have a second story, which didn't happen to me, but somebody I know that owns another business, and he got taken for about 80 grand. And what happened in his case is his email got hacked, and the hacker was smart enough to just sit there quietly and read emails and monitor emails. He might have been forwarding it to, someplace else and keeping up with it. But eventually he went to buy something and sent, he was, I forget if he was buying or selling, but anyway, he had to transfer his bank information he was sending money to somebody, right? So it was about changing the bank information. Like, oh no, sorry, that's the wrong information. So this is the bad guy typing the email, right? So sorry, I gave you the wrong transaction ID or whatever it was, and then sent the email. So when the money got sent, it didn't get sent to where it should have gone. It got sent to the criminal, and nobody realized it until it was way too late, and you just can't get that money back. And that was a little bit more sophisticated in what they were doing, but I mean, $80,000 in cash in West Africa goes a long, long way. So, I'm sure that type of stuff happens all the time. Well, Whitney, when you're meeting with a small business owner or operations manager or whoever, what are some of the things that you're covering with them early on in this process?
Of course, we definitely always are starting out with just gathering basic business info. Like you said, what exactly is it that the operations are doing, so that we can know what we need to try to protect your business for. But another, of course, key feature that I would say, in particular, cyber insurance is based off of would be revenues as well for the business. So again, that's information that I'm going to be discussing and collecting up front. Typically at that point too, that's when I'm going to be turning to more of the specialists such as Chris, to provide, of course, information on the business itself, to then come up with what is going to be the best quote for you that's going to be covering everything that you actually need covered.
Okay. And if a breach happens, then they simply just call the insurance company. And Chris, you said the team comes in and takes over. And, basically we, as a business owner or manager, we would step back and you guys would handle basically everything from that point. Because it's the insurance company's money. So they have a very vested interest in, trying to make it work.
Yeah.
Correct.
When you're looking at insurance coverage, what do you see as perhaps something that a lot of people pass on or think that they don't need, that you see where they actually get burned because we'll pay for the ransomware costs, but we're not going to pay for lost productivity, right? Or lost revenues that you would have been generating while you're dealing with this cyber attack. Is that the type of thing that you run into, or are people pretty much just buying it all and, just trying to be covered?
Yeah, it's not necessarily an a la carte policy. For instance, there's situations where I'm sure Whitney sees on her side, you have a package carrier that has it on their business owner's policy, an endorsement. That's, we kind of warn clients against that for many reasons. It's not as broad. It doesn't come with, all of the risk management that a lot of our policies do with the carrier partners that we work with. Doesn't come with active risk monitoring, that kind of stuff, where they're actually running scans on your business and seeing what you could be exposed to and alerting you of that. No, it's basically they're either not purchasing anything or they're purchasing everything that comes with the policy. It's very rare that we'll see, them.
And one of the things that we actually just started doing this year is penetration testing, which I say this year, I mean 2022. Clients have hired us to do penetration testing to try to find their weak points, to see if we can fool the employees to click on links and things like that, do some phishing and that kind of thing. Really, because you want to do it when it's not a crisis, when it's not the bad guy. You want to see where your weak points are so you can shore those up. You can retrain and re-educate people because, and correct me if I'm wrong, the vast majority of cyber attacks are initiated by employees clicking on links. I mean, I get 50 emails a day. You can look at the URL in the attachment, and it's not a PDF, even though PDFs can be infected. It's usually like some kind of HTML link or something like that, and it's just bad news if you click that. Okay, and then from a notification and communication perspective, as an MSP, what should we be telling our customers? And then what should they be telling their customers? Should we all have a process of advising somebody to get cyber insurance if we know that they don't have it? And if they don't have it, should we make them sign a document that says, hey, I acknowledge that I've been told? Or what do you see as kind of a best practice to, try to put up that wall, in these cyber insurance situations?
Yeah, so I have a disclosure form that we sometimes put out that I could definitely, could send to Whitney for her to have. It's just something that says you've acknowledged you've received it and that you've respectfully declined coverage. But as far as, of course, our job, Whitney and I's job, is to advise all of the businesses and clients that we see come across to have this, or at least think of it. And I would say the same as an MSSP. I think you're providing them with 90% of the battle, which is improving their cybersecurity so that they can get best in class pricing and coverage in the marketplace. And so, it's important as well that recommendations made backed up with statistics and facts. And, we have a number of different tools that shows them real cost in addition to claims examples, incident roadmaps, those kind of things. So
I know in our service agreement, we have a paragraph there, but I like the idea of giving somebody a document to say, hey, sign this. It's a lot more direct. It really elevates the importance of the cyber security insurance conversation when you slip that piece of paper and it's just not a paragraph buried in this other, legalese that we have. So we'll definitely be interested in getting that document and starting to use that going forward. Any last minute thoughts on cyber insurance and how SMBs can benefit or protect themselves?
I mean, I think it's just important that the statistics are out there. They understand that, that certain industries are at risk. You have, the ones that probably are most prominent. We see a lot of manufacturers that, ransomware could get involved with their system, shut their network down. You're talking about major production delays and then major business interruption loss, the cost of doing business, right? I mean, the BI event A business interruption event due to ransomware, the average time frame is 19 days. So that's like an eternity to them. Your professional service, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, people also need to understand that oftentimes they back up the virus or whatever, the malware, they back it up to their backup. So now their backups are corrupted. And it's, even if you can get the decryption key, if you lose a server in that process, you still may have to get another server, which means you got to order it, you got to get it in, you got to get it configured, and then you got to download 15 terabytes of data from the cloud. And then, by this time you've lost a month. And hopefully you're back up and running, but your opportunity cost is definitely probably the biggest part of that.
Yeah, and you have your, professional service firms. You also have the construction industry, contractors. But having the malicious actor phishing, business email compromise type situation where you're sending six figures to who you think is your CFO, but it's right into wherever it's going. There's construction contractors have bids that they have to make certain times and timelines. There's actually programs out there that we have that specifically define missed bid coverage and give you coverage for that in the event of a cyber breach. So there's a lot of sophisticated coverage out there, that isn't super costly. I think in the SMB space, like I would probably recommend, for the most part, they're getting $1 million limit. Premiums in that revenue band are ranging anywhere from I would say 1,500 to 3,500, depending upon their security posture and the cyber and the standards protocols they have in place, MFA, encryption, backup, separated air gap from the system. You're probably on the lower end of that.
Very good. Well, we're just a little bit over 30 minutes, so let's go ahead and cut it off here. I want to say thank you to you guys. I'll have your contact information and I'll post it in the video. So if anybody wants to reach out, they know how to get a hold of you. Hopefully we've been able to help somebody make that decision today. That's going to be best for their business, whether they get cyber insurance or not. That's up to them, but hopefully now they're informed and they can do what's right. So thank you very much. And I hope you guys have a great day.
All right. Thank you. Take care.